Thanks for downloading a 3CR podcast. 3CR is an independent community radio station based in Melbourne, Australia. We need your financial support to keep going. Go to www.3cr.org.au for more information and to donate online. Now stay tuned for your 3CR podcast.
Sabah al-Khair, good morning dear listeners. You're listening to Radio 3CR on 855 AM and Palestine Remembered with Robert Martin, Nasser Mashni and Yusuf Ahmed al-Rimawi.
Palestine Remembered is Australia's only English language radio program that is totally dedicated to Palestine. We'd like to welcome those listening on 855 and those that will join us on podcast at 3cr.org.au.
Thanks for joining us. Stay with us and enjoy the episode.
Listeners, thank you for joining us on Palestine Remembered during Corona lockdown. We're recording outside of the studio, so apologies in advance for the audio quality. I'm honoured, though, to be joined by a dear friend, Tarek, who is the founder of We Were and Still Are Here, an initiative in Palestine to document the stories of Palestinian destroyed villages and connecting diaspora and refugee Palestinians with their homes. He does this via video and internet. It's available all over Facebook and Instagram. Stay with me and enjoy the show with Tarek. Good morning, good evening, Tarek. You're joining us from Jerusalem in Palestine. How's things there?
From my side, good evening. It's so sad what's happening nowadays. We're trapped. We can't go. And, but for us as Palestinians, it's not that weird because for me, I'm used to these closures and curfews. Yeah, and it reminded me with the Intifada days. So yes, a little bit familiar, but now it's a worldwide issue.
So the whole world is feeling what Palestine feels.
Yes, but even I live in Jerusalem, but it's also different than other places in Palestine, like Gaza. So people in Gaza, they are really used to these things. They can't travel. For example, in March, I had so many activities and exhibitions abroad, and I've canceled everything. So I felt that feeling that I can't travel. I can't cross the border, the bridge, and go to Jordan and to other places in the world. But then I felt and I thought of the people of Gaza who couldn't travel since, 2007, something like this. So I said, okay, fine. It's happening to everyone here.
So you're under the restriction of the Israeli regime. What does that look like?
So here it's a bit complicated because our lives, it's connected with Ramallah and Bethlehem in the West Bank, or our friends, relatives, work, everything. So here in Jerusalem, it's like you are under two authorities, let's say, because you are connected to the West Bank. And in the West Bank, they started, the closure and everything before that. Bethlehem, it started maybe 3 weeks ago, and we couldn't see anyone or go to Bethlehem. And also, there's something else, Nasser. The Israelis, they put cameras everywhere around Jerusalem. So after what happened in Bethlehem, they took all the numbers of the cars who went to Bethlehem, and after the Corona thing happened, they said, okay, there are a number of people from Jerusalem who went to Bethlehem in the last 2 weeks. Now you should be in quarantine. So they used also these military and security cameras for other reasons. So yeah, and here in Jerusalem, for example, it's not a full closure, but in the West Bank, sometimes they say the Israelis, they close the checkpoints at. So it's like they didn't take the decision yet, but every time and then they say we're going to close the checkpoints between Jerusalem and the West Bank, but it's still not closed yet. But to Bethlehem, it's closed. Everything is complicated. we don't know what's going to happen next. And even in the numbers of people who were infected by the virus, there are no, let's say, clear numbers how many Arab Palestinians living inside the Green Line who were infected. So even in Jerusalem, sometimes they put us as Palestinians, and sometimes as, because we hold Israeli IDs. So it's complicated, and it's still we don't know where we're going.
One of the realities is the Israelis have said there's up to about 9,000 Palestinian workers from the West Bank who work in Israel. They said you can work, but you can't go home for the next 2 months. Sleeping on working sites, etc. And towards the end of winter, coming into spring. In fact, one Palestinian worker was sick, fainted in a checkout, and they drove him and just dumped him on the other side of the fence.
Yes, because the only thing they think about is their economy. So for them, they wanted to continue with and to remain to keep the the construction, all in some fields. So the cheap workers who can give them less money, they are the Palestinians living in the West Bank. So okay, we want to keep our economy going on. Come and work. We're gonna give you places to stay in, but you're not gonna go back to the West Bank for 2 months until this crisis end. So they didn't make it right, and they didn't give the workers these places to stay in for 2 months. So most of them, they wanted to go back to the West Bank, and this here it happened. The thing. And today, or maybe yesterday, the first Palestinian passed away from the corona. She's from a village near Jerusalem. Her son was working inside the Green Line, and he was infected by the virus. And now the whole village, there are more than 19 people infected with the virus. And as you know, the hospitals in the West Bank, they are not ready for these kind of things and diseases. So that's why it's so worrying.
Mm-hmm. And we spare a thought for Gaza, which is even worse. Now, Tarek, let's go quickly to your work. I was honored that you hosted my brother and sons and nephew and I last year, and inshallah we'll see you again very soon. Tell us about your fantastic work and what it is that you do.
First of all, I'm really sad that this coronavirus, it's happening nowadays during the springtime, because on the springtime, it's the most likely time to go and to document the Palestinian ethnic cleansed villages. So this is the thing that I do. In 1948, more than 500 Palestinian villages were ethnically cleansed by the Israelis. So where most of the Palestinian refugees they are from nowadays. What I do is visual documentation to these villages, but in a different way. We have so many Palestinian and Arab historians who wrote books about Palestine before 1948, about these villages and everything. But nowadays, with the technology and social media, I said, no, I have to go in a new, different way of documentation based on this kind of visual documentation. So the main idea is that the Palestinians in the diaspora, they send me old pictures of their houses before 1948. And I take the picture, look at it, and compare it where this picture was. For example, Nasser sends me a picture for his grandfather in Jaffa, in Yafa, in the 30s. And he tells me, hey, Tarek, I don't know what happened to our house. I can't come to Palestine, for example. So I take the picture, I find the place, if it's still there or not. Okay, I take the picture from the same angle. And then I write the story about the family, about the neighborhood, about what happened from a historical side and from a social, humane side. So this is the idea. So people from all the world, they send me old pictures in black and white of their houses, and I document these houses. And sometimes when some Palestinians who has let's say, who have the foreign citizenship who could enter Palestine. Okay, I document the villages with the story of the Palestinian himself or herself. Uh, you can write about any village in Palestine, but it's different when you bring someone who's originally from this village and document his return. So the documentation, it comes sometimes with pictures or sometimes with videos or articles. So this is the main idea of the documentation. And sometimes I knock on the doors to see who's living in these houses. If it's not a destroyed village, because there are houses in cities like Haifa, like Akka, like Jaffa, Jerusalem, and these places. So sometimes there are Israelis living in these Palestinian houses, and most of them, they don't care about. Okay, yes, sometimes I show them the pictures, like, hey, you're living in the house of this Palestinian who's now a refugee, for example, in Lebanon or in Syria or in Jordan. So most of them, they tell me, okay, we don't care. So what? We're stronger now. We won the war, and that's it.
And just to make it clear to our listeners, you actually knock on the door and confront them and say, Shlomo or Ava, you're living in Abu Muhammad's house. Here's a picture of Abu Muhammad in 1947. His descendants are now refugees in Jordan, Lebanon, perhaps Canada, Australia, anywhere in the world. How do you feel about living in their home? Tell us a couple of the reactions you've had, personal stories.
Yeah. For example, last year, I had a picture of a Palestinian family from the late 20s. The owner of the house, his name is Shukri. They took a family picture in front of their house in the western part of Jerusalem. The old man with his wife and daughters in front of the house. After they built and finished the house, they thought that we're gonna live here forever. So in 1948, they were expelled from this house. So I had the old picture of the family, and I found the house in one of the neighborhoods in West Jerusalem. I took the picture from the same angle for documentation, and then said, "Let's knock." So I knocked, and there was an Israeli man. I told him, "Listen, I know that you're living here now, but just to let you know that this is the house of this man. This is his picture and his family and everything." He said, "Yes, I know that I'm living in a house for a Palestinian who left, as if he left for a vacation, not after massacres that took place everywhere in Palestine in 1948, and they were expelled by force." So what the reaction is, most of them, let's say, they tell me after a conversation, like after you tell them everything, they say, well, we are the chosen people and God gave me this house. So this is what they believe, that because they are the chosen people, God gave these houses for them instead of the Palestinians who built these houses in the 20s, 30s, and 40s, and the Palestinians who have all the documents and the proofs that these houses are theirs. But now there are Israeli laws like the guardian absentee law that takes all your properties, and they can use your house, your property for other reasons, and you are not allowed to get your back again, to take it again.
The absurdity of that argument that we just left, that it wasn't massacres and the point of a gun barrel. Have you felt threatened at all? I mean, if somebody knocked on my door, and I was an illegal settler, as occupying somebody else's home, I don't think I would take kindly to your intrusion.
No, but they speak in a confident way. They just don't care, and sometimes it depends on the area. Okay, sometimes if like it's a kibbutz or somewhere, like I don't take the risk to do this. I just document and just go away. But in some places like Haifa and West Jerusalem, they pretend to be a little bit like leftists and these things. So they talk with you. They make this, let's say, argument or conversation that leads to this answer. But you can sense from the beginning if this is going to be a good conversation, like to take something from them or not. And sometimes, like if you're just standing outside and take a picture of the house, and they feel like, hey, what are you doing here? I just take the picture and leave, you know. But sometimes some of them, they approach you and they tell you, hey, yes, I know that I'm living in the house of this family, but yeah. If, for example, you know, maybe last summer, a Palestinian man who's from Safad, originally from Safad, in the north of Palestine, he came on American citizenship for the first time after 71 years to Palestine. And his daughter, she was making a film. She's a filmmaker. And after we found the house, after hours of searching, and then we knocked on the door. So the Israeli man who was living inside, he saw three cameras recording, and he saw like equipment, mics, and lighting. And so he wanted to be polite. And then when we told him that this is the house of Hosni Ghneim, this is the man, he was born here. So he said, okay, you look like a nice man. You are invited here anytime if you want to see the house. But what can I tell you? A war took place here and we were stronger. The house is mine. Do you want me to be sorry that we won the war? So this is history and that's it.
Unbelievable. One of my favorite stories, Tara, is Halima. Can you share Halima's story with our listeners?
Yeah, sure. So we should know something that, let's say, if we can say that the population of the Palestinians around the world, maybe 13 million Palestinians, we can say that most of the Palestinians, they are outside of like historical Palestine, living in refugee camps all over the world. But also we have refugees living inside Palestine. For example, 40% of the Palestinians in the West Bank, they are originally refugees. 70 to 75% of the Palestinians in Gaza, they are refugees as well. And even the Palestinians living inside the Green Line, holding the Israeli citizenship nowadays, more than 35% of them, they are displaced as well. So that's why there are refugee camps inside the West Bank and Gaza. So one of the stories, one of the remarkable stories that happened maybe 5-6 years ago, is the story of Halima. Halima, she's originally from a village called Beit Nabala. Beit Nabala, it's a village in Ramle district. It's near the airport. And then after 1948, the Lid airport, what they call Ben Gurion airport, it expanded on the lands of her village. So in 1948, they were expelled from the village. Halima, she was maybe 15 years old. And then the Israelis, they destroyed all the houses in the village, and they built two kibbutzes, one of them called Kfar Truman, and the other one is Beit Nehemiah. And the ruins of the village, you can see, there are few, some ruins here and there, like water wells, and the school is still there, and the remains of the houses. So what I knew that Halima, when she was 15 years old, her family, they walked to the east a few kilometers, and then they stayed in Ramallah and in a refugee camp, which is now called Al Jalazon refugee camp, Jalazon refugee camp in Ramallah. What I knew that Halima, she has never ever in her life returned back to her village. Can you imagine? Her village, it's only 40 minutes from the refugee camp, but because she lives in the West Bank, she is not allowed to go to the other side. And so her nephew, he's my friend. He's a Palestinian author called Ziad, and he told me, Tarek, my aunt, she's really sick, and she has never ever been to her village since 1948, and we're afraid something bad happens to her without seeing her village. So I said, okay, fine, I'll go to the refugee camp and take her to her village. So I went there, and on that time it was the Eid was approaching, and the Israelis, they said any Palestinian living in the West Bank and who is above 60 years old, they can enter the checkpoint if there is no restrictions on him or her, and they can go for certain days and certain times on certain day, not 24/7, you know. So this was an advantage. So I took Halima and also two old women from the refugee camp who are originally from the same village. And on that day, also her nephew Ziad, he got a permission to enter. So we went to the village, and you know, in the village, the old women, when we arrived, the first thing they did, you know, every Palestinian who returns back to their village, they take a plastic bag with them. So they started putting soil, dirt from the ground. So they started collecting things and plants, and then they started singing. You know, after an hour, we started, you know, trying to find they had their houses, but everything was destroyed. After maybe an hour, we could recognize the house of Halima from the water well. And she said, yes, this is our house, this is our water well. And maybe you can provide the listeners with the links and the link of the video when she returned. So because you could see her sitting on the water well. And it was so emotional and touching when they found the ruins of their houses. And after maybe an hour, we said, okay, let's go back to the refugee camp. So the old women, they sat on a rock and they said, no, we don't want to go back to the refugee camp. I said, what? They said, we've been dreaming for this moment for years. You know, we don't like the refugee camp. For years, we've been dreaming to return back to our village. Why do you want to take me to the refugee camp? Just leave me here. I just want to stay here, to die here. Here's my father's grave. I can just sleep next to it. I can eat from the nature here in my village. Please don't take me back to the refugee camp. So it took me maybe 15 minutes to convince them to get in the car. And then something shocking happened that Ziad, my friend, he told me, listen, Tarek, do you know that my aunt Halima, she has never ever in her life seen the sea? I said, what? You know, I have friends living in the West Bank, in Nablus and in Jenin, who are in the 30s, but they didn't see the sea. But an old woman in her 80s, she didn't see the sea in her life. So this was shocking. You know, in Palestine, we have more than 260 kilometers on the Mediterranean, and we also have the Sea of Galilee, we have the Red Sea, but 2 million Palestinians in the West Bank, they are not allowed to see the sea in Palestine. For example, in places like Tul Karim, it's only 15 minutes from Tul Karim to the Mediterranean, to the sea. But the people in Tul Karim, they don't know the sea. Can you imagine? So it was really shocking. So I said, I made one of her dreams come true, and I took her to her village. I'm gonna make another dream come true. So I took her to Jaffa, and there was a famous picture when she saw the sea for the first time ever, when she touched the sea. So it was really emotional, like an old woman wearing the traditional Palestinian dress with the Palestinian embroidery, okay, approaching the sea to see it for the first time ever and to touch it for the first time. So this is the story of Halima.
That's amazing. To talk to your point about dirt, I know I know my father went for the first time after 48 in 95 back to Palestine, and he came back with some dirt, and he said, you know, I hope that I can get buried in Palestine, but if not, this is some dirt from Jerusalem, sprinkle this on my grave. And sadly, his prophecy was true. He wasn't able to be buried in Palestine, and so we had to sprinkle Jerusalem dirt upon him. This is the reality. Thank you.
Yeah.
So for our listeners, Tarek, you've been on Al Jazeera, has featured some of your work. where else could our listeners find and see your work? I mean, I can share the link to Halima's video on the podcast hyperlink, but where else could they find more of your work?
Yeah, the main platform for what I'm doing is the social media itself, like Facebook and Instagram, and mainly the Facebook, because from Facebook people can approach and connect with me, so that I can find their villages and sometimes make video calls for the old people who are not allowed to come to Palestine. So because sometimes there are Palestinians in Lebanon who are not allowed to visit Palestine like any other Palestinians. So I go to their villages and I make video calls for them to see their villages. So mainly it's the social media, Facebook. I have a website, tarekbakri.com, but the Facebook, it's more updated. And yes, recently Al Jazeera documentary, they made a documentary about this initiative, which I call it in Arabic, Kunna wa ma zilna, we were and still are here. And there are so many stories, like it took 3 generations of Palestinians in this film during 1 year. The first Palestinian generation, like Halima, and other stories for Palestinians living inside Palestine, and other stories for Palestinians in the diaspora returning for the first time to Palestine. And also there are stories of second generation of people from in their 40s and 50s who returned back, and also the third generation who was also born in the diaspora, who returned back to Palestine for the first time, and who are still, it focuses on how the third generation is also connected and insisting to return back to Palestine. So this film, we started publishing it and screening it in some places in Palestine, in Jordan and Kuwait and other places. And we were planning also to visit Australia to screen the film there, but then the Corona thing happened, and so we hope that after this crisis ends, so we could screen it in Australia.
It would be great if we could have it as part of the Palestine Film Festival, which is in its 11th year this year. So with a bit of luck, maybe we can get you out here in October, November. Now, Tarek, we've only got a couple of minutes to go. I wanted to share a story when my family and I were with you in Haifa, and we were there, and you introduced me to some wonderful Palestinian women. And the first thing they said to me, because you're so famous, Tarek, is, where's your village? Has Tarek found your house yet? So they didn't even ask me where I was from before, assuming naturally if Tarek is with a foreign Palestinian, then there must be a connection somewhere.
And this is a big responsibility, Nasser. Like, it's a big responsibility that anyone who wants to find the roots, the village, the house, the family, so they approach me. So this is the responsibility, especially that this initiative, it's independent, and I do it like with a small team of volunteers, and it's a voluntary initiative. So yes, it's a big responsibility, and yes, I remember when we were in Haifa.
So we've only got a minute to go, Habibi. How can our listeners support you?
Yeah, since this initiative, it's independent, because I refuse to take any conditional fund from any organization or any party or any from anyone. That's why I'm focusing more on the crowdfunding. So I have nowadays a profile on Patreon, so people can go to Patreon and just be part of this initiative, because there are so many stories on the to-do list, and because I'm doing these stories by myself, so it takes time, and it costs also a lot. And sometimes there are Palestinians who could not afford the return to Palestine. So when you contribute to this initiative, you're also helping to document a story and a return of a Palestinian to his village, to his house, to his homeland for the first time. So basically, this is what I'm doing recently to continue with this initiative and to keep it independent.
A special thanks to Tarek from Palestine. Stay safe, free Palestine, and go to apan.org.au and join us in the fight to free Palestine.